Today, we're going to dive into the story of a forgotten corner of Europe, a place called Bukowina. It was this incredible, multi-ethnic world, and then, poof, in just 4 short years, it was gone, completely vanished from the map.
So how does that even happen? How does an entire world just disappear? It's a massive question, right? But that's exactly what we're looking at here. And to figure it out, we've got to go back, all the way back, to the summer of 1914, to the exact moment the old world really started to die.
And this right here, this is the declaration of war from the Habsburg Emperor, Franz Joseph. I mean, listen to the language. It's a call to arms, sure, but it's more than that. You can feel the confidence in his words. He's trusting that all 52 million people in his huge, sprawling empire are going to rally around him. Okay, so for most of the empire, this call to war was, let's just say, met with some anxiety. You know, there was maybe an initial patriotic buzz, but that faded pretty fast. This was a massive multinational state that was kind of teetering on the edge already. It was full of social problems, deep national conflicts. War was the last thing most people wanted.
But then you have Bukowina. Now, you got to understand, from the perspective of the imperial capital in Vienna, this place was basically the middle of nowhere. It was the back of beyond. They had all these nicknames for it. Semi-Asia, the Wild East, even the poorhouse of the monarchy. Just some remote, obscure borderland nobody really thought about. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Because in this so-called Wild East, the reaction wasn't anxiety at all. It was the complete opposite. It was this massive, unified explosion of patriotic fervor. You had Jewish communities who had really thrived under the Habsburgs, just overwhelmed by war fever. You had Romanian and Ukrainian political parties tripping over themselves to declare their loyalty. And the Poles? Well, they saw Tsarist Russia as their main enemy, so they were practically lining up to volunteer and fight for the emperor. So here's the big question, the one we're trying to answer. Why? Why did this incredibly diverse place react with such intense, united loyalty to a war that would, in the end, be the very thing that destroyed it?
Okay, to get to the bottom of that, we have to hit rewind. We need to go back and really understand what this unique world of Bukowina was actually like before the war ever started.
So, you remember how Vienna saw this place? Dismissive, right? The Wild East. Well, the reality on the ground couldn't have been more different. The capital city, Czernowitz, was actually nicknamed Little Vienna. Think about that. It had a German-language university, it was a major German cultural center. This wasn't some backwater, it was a truly vibrant, cosmopolitan place. And you can see just how special it was when you put it next to its neighbor, Galicia. Now, Galicia was a mess of conflict. You had this powerful Polish nobility constantly at odds with the Ukrainian peasant majority. But Bukowina, totally different story. There wasn't a powerful local aristocracy to dominate things. Instead, it was managed directly by Vienna. It was kind of like this quasi-colonial experiment, you know? They were trying to build a whole new kind of society from scratch.
And a look at the population from 1910 really shows you why it was so different. Look at these numbers. You had Ukrainians and Romanians as the biggest groups, but neither one was a majority, not even close. Then you have these really significant, really influential minorities of Jews, Germans, and Poles. And that balance, that right there was the absolute key to how the whole place functioned.
The society was also built in a really particular way. Historians call it social national faults, which basically means different ethnic groups tended to dominate different parts of the economy. So, for example, Romanians and Ukrainians were almost all in agriculture and forestry. Jewish communities were the backbone of commerce, industry, and professions like doctors and lawyers. And Germans and Poles, they were concentrated in public service and skilled crafts. So you have all these distinct worlds, but the crucial thing is, they all depended on each other to function.
And this whole interdependent system was managed by an official policy, something historians have dubbed the Pax Bukowiniensis, which just means the Bukowinian peace. Think of the Habsburg government in Vienna as a referee. Their whole job was to make sure no single group got too powerful or started to dominate the others. By carefully balancing everyone's interests, they created this fragile but functional peace. And this led to a climate of tolerance and, this is the important part, a deep, shared loyalty to the emperor. Because everyone saw him as the guy holding it all together, the ultimate protector of this delicate balance.
Yeah, people often look back on this pre-war period as a kind of golden age. It was this incredible, fragile thing they had built. But the outbreak of World War I, well, that was the hammer that was about to shatter the whole thing into a million pieces.
So remember that incredible unified patriotism from July 1914? Turns out,
It was paper thin. By September, just 2 months in, Russian troops had already occupied the capital, Czernowitz. A month later, Austrian forces took it back, and the local people went wild, huge celebrations in the streets. But then, everything changed. The Austrian military became deeply paranoid. They started looking at their own people with suspicion and began these incredibly harsh reprisals, accusing their own Romanian and Ukrainian citizens of being traitors, of collaborating with the Russians.
And that right there was the fatal blow. The entire foundation of the Bukovinian peace was that the emperor was this impartial protector, this fair referee. And now, the state itself was turning on its own people. It was a total betrayal. All those abuses by the Austrian military just destroyed people's confidence. And that amazing loyalty from the start of the war, it just curdled. It turned into suspicion and fear and deep, deep resentment.
The damage was done. There was no going back. By the time the Great War finally limped to a close, the old world of Bukovina, it was just gone. Forever.
That Pax Bukoviniensis totally dead. And that special, shared regional identity, that feeling of being Bukovinian, it was just swallowed up by the aggressive, competing nationalisms that were tearing the rest of Europe apart. People stopped thinking of themselves as Bukovinians first. They were now Romanians, or Ukrainians, or Poles first.
So, by the war's end, that unity from 1914 felt like it was from another lifetime. Pretty much every major ethnic group, except for the Germans and Jews, who really had the most to lose from the empire collapsing, was demanding to break away. The province was just shattered, splintered along these new ethno-national lines and divided up between new countries. And just like that, Bukovina, this unique, multi-ethnic world, had ceased to exist.
And all of this leaves us with a really big, kind of unsettling question. Was this inevitable? Are multi-ethnic societies like this always destined to just fracture under pressure? Or was the story of Bukovina a special kind of tragedy? A fragile world that wasn't destroyed by its own internal problems, but was shattered by the paranoia and the violence of a massive global war that, ironically, it had joined with so much enthusiasm. You know, the story of this lost world, it really doesn't give us any easy answers, does it?